Do you Proxmox? Proxmox is one of the most popular hypervisors around for those doing a home lab. Now, it is something I have dabbed into personally, but have not spent a whole lot of time with until now. Prior to clicking on this video, you're probably wondering, like, what is Proxmox and how do I install it? Well, I've got you covered. This is B from Tay Talk Tech. Today, I'm going to give you an introduction to Proxmox and show you how to install it, so stick around. I have a favor to ask. If you like this type of video and want to see more content like it, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell button for notifications. Also, don't forget to give this video a like if you like it. Let me know what you liked, didn't like, or if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or emotional outbursts down in the comments below. And lastly, stick around all the way to the end to get the most out of this video. Let's do this thing. Alrighty, so we're going to talk a little bit about an introduction to Proxmox. Now, you heard me use the term hypervisor, and a hypervisor is simply just a platform used for managing virtual machines. So think, KVM, VirtualBox, are probably the ones you're most familiar with if you've spent time around my channel. There are two types of hypervisors. Type 1 hypervisors, where the OS is the hypervisor and sits on top of the hardware directly. And there's also type 2 hypervisors, where the hypervisor sits on top of the host OS. Think of if you're a Windows or a Linux user, you can think of VirtualBox. If you're a Mac user, you can think of UTM. I think the other program that they use on macOS is Parallels, I think is what's called. I've never used it, but I do know it's out there. So yeah, those are examples of hypervisors. VMware, I forget what they call theirs, but that is an example of a type 1 hypervisor, and then of course Proxmox is another example of a type 1 hypervisor. Now, Proxmox actually offers 3 different types of servers, but the hypervisor or Proxmox virtual environment is by far the most popular amongst home labbers. Now, the PVE for Proxmox, it is a type 1 hypervisor used for managing virtual machines and containers. It does this using KVM, which I have covered extensively in my Linux virtualization series, and LXC, which is a Linux containerization platform that's similar to Docker. I believe it's managed by Canonical. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what it is. I know it's a big thing with them, and with Ubuntu and stuff like that. So so I'm not going to be covering what a virtual machine is and what a container is in this video, but but if this is a video you would like me to make, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. And in this video, what I plan on doing is we're actually going to be, now that we've kind of got an introduction to Proxmox, we're going to go ahead and work to actually install Proxmox on bare metal on a little system that I have here. So let's go ahead and get started into that. So bear with me here for just a second. All right, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to shrink my face down here. Oops. Let me turn off the external computer real quick before I do that. All right, so we're going to need 2 things to go ahead and get this actually set up and installed. So, well, actually 3 things. So one thing we're going to need is a USB drive. So here's a USB drive that I have. You're going to need the Proxmox virtual environment, or PVE, ISO image, which is, we're actually on the download website here now. And then you're also going to need a program to go ahead and take this ISO image and put it onto this USB drive. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just plug in this USB drive. All right, and then the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually go ahead and download Proxmox. So let's go ahead and do that. And now this is going to take a little bit of time, and the speed is going to depend on your internet, so keep that in mind. So with this particular case, it's going to take about 7 to 8 minutes for it to download onto my system, and it's a file size of about 1.3 gigabytes. So sometimes, like with these websites, you can cancel it out and then hit download again, and it'll go faster. Yeah, see, it's going a little bit faster, but not significantly. So it's something on the hoster's end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let this run its course. And then once it's done, I will come back and we will go ahead and continue the video. All right, and we successfully got it downloaded. So let's go ahead and go to the next application that we're going to need. And this one will be super quick because I actually already have it set up on mine. But the other one's going to be Berlina Etcher. It's going to be an application that allows you to go ahead and turn that ISO image into a bootable image that you can go ahead and use to install Proxmox on your system. So there also is a tool called Rufus for Windows. If you know, a lot of people who use Windows are a big fan of that. I actually like it as well, and it's really good with making Windows boot images. Windows boot USBs, which you can't really do with Etcher. So I'm going to go ahead and put links to all three of these down in the description below, so that if you want to go ahead and access them, you can go ahead and do that. So. All right, let's go ahead and go to. What you'll do here is you'll just when you just go to Berlina Etcher. You'll just hit download Etcher, and it'll take you down here, and just pick it based on your OS. Now, keep in mind that for Mac OS, you want to differentiate between the ARM and the non-ARM, and you can see that here. This is non-ARM, this is ARM, also over here. So just be mindful of that, and you would just hit download. You can also just use whatever you want to use. So, all right, let's go ahead and go back over here. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to go, you can flash it in two ways here. You can flash it from a file, you can flash from a URL. I just like to do from a file, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We got it right here. We're going to hit open. We're going to select the target. The cool thing is about this is it gives you a little warning if it's a large drive, because back a while ago, I accidentally went over an entire this drive, a previous iteration of this drive. This is, I think, last year, and it just completely wiped everything out. And once I added this, I was like, oh my god, thank you. So I didn't accidentally select that. So you'll want to select it, the USB that you're going to use, hit select, and then it's pretty easy. What you're going to do is you're just going to hit flash, and it's going to prompt you. It may or may not prompt you for credentials depending on your setup on your computer. And we can see here that it is giving us an ET of about 1 minute. So yeah, it's a pretty quick process most of the time. It just really depends, on the USB drive and a few other factors. A lot of times what happens with these USB drives is when you start doing this stuff is, because it's writing to it, and a lot of them just have like generally slow writing times, especially for cheap ones. But if you're using faster ones, it may be faster, so just keep that in mind. But is with some of these slower ones, what will happen is it'll start off at 20, 30 megabits a second, but then what ends up happening is that it starts to get hot, so then it slows down because it's thermal throttling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just place the video on a quick pause, and then once this is done, we'll come back and do that. So, all right, there we go. Now the flash is complete. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just take this USB drive out of my MacBook. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert. You can't see this on camera, but I'm going to go ahead and insert this into the little mini PC. It's actually a little ThinkCenter. It's got a 2200 GE, Ryzen 3 2200 GE in it. It's an older one, 16 gigabytes RAM, couple drives, and all that good stuff. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is we're going to go ahead and switch off. We're going to switch on the external computer. All right, there we go. I haven't turned it on yet. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is, now that I've got that in there, is I'm going to go ahead and hit the power button on it. And what we're going to do is we're going to want to go ahead and go into the boot menu. Now that will vary depending on the system that you're running. So look at the documentation for your system before going into there, because mine is F12. See, here we go. And not seeing it there. Okay. All right, this is not uncommon, so let me go ahead and power this off. It just depends, especially with these cheaper. This is actually a super budget-oriented type system. So let me go ahead and just move this one over to a different USB port, because it's all going to depend on the system and which ones they're going to have active at boot, right? So let's go ahead and try this one. We're going to try a different one. The first time I had it one on the back, so this time I put it on one in the front. And sometimes on some of these systems, especially a little bit older systems, probably from 2017. So what they'll do is they will only set up certain ones to be able to go ahead and be able to be accessed during boot. So you have to kind of figure out which ones those are. On some of them, it wouldn't let you do like USB 3s. You could only do it on USB 2s in some of the older systems that I've been experiencing, especially with these integrated systems, from like Lenovo, HP, and stuff like that. So look up the documentation if you're using like one from like an OEM like Dell, HP, Lenovo. Go to their website for them, and they usually have it's usually F12, like 99% of the time. It will vary for motherboard manufacturers. I think it's the same key. Like if you've something that you built yourself or got it pre-built from a company, like I think it's still F12, but just check the documentation to make sure. Sometimes it'll be on your splash screen. So what we can see ours here. So it's actually right here. This time it worked with the front USB. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, we're going to go ahead and just go back up to here. We're going to click on that one. There we go. We're going to just hit enter, and it's going to go ahead and start booting. All right, so here we go. We are now into Proxmox. This is a pretty quick process, so just bear with me here for just a second. I got to get myself just a little bit more organized here on my side. All right, just need to get a couple notes here off to the side. All right, so here we go. You got a couple of different options you can do here as far as installing. You can either do it through the graphical user interface or the terminal user interface. We're going to go ahead and use the graphical because that's much easier. Cool. And Proxmox is based on Debian, so you're going to see a lot of like familiar stuff when it's kind of doing some of this. And a lot of the management will be based on Debian and Linux and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and let it do its thing. It's kind of getting stuff set up here. So let's take a little bit of time. It'll just depend. The hardware, the system, and all that stuff. It's kind of just doing all the pre-checks before we actually start the installer. So we can see here, we can see there that it went through the DHCP process. So hopefully, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and move myself up here. It's kind of a weird place for me to be, but hey, here we are. Here's the the end user license agreement. So read through that if you're curious. All right, and we're gonna hit agree here. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and put it on the Samsung drive. We're cool with that one. It's 240 gig SSD. All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and just update this because I am not in this one. I'm not really sure where that one's at. But this is the one that's me. I'm Central Standard. So let's go over here to next. We're going to go ahead and set a password for it. Okay. And email, like it really doesn't matter. Like you can put your email in there. I don't. I just changed this to an example .local to get it off my back. It's really not going to make much of a difference. Same thing. PVE.local domain.local. Okay, so this is gonna be this part's gonna be a little interesting because sometimes the DHCP fails. It really just depends. Like this is the first time in a while that it's actually ran the DHCP and the DHCP stuff is correct. I'm sorry, all the actual networking stuff is correct. Now, one of the ways that you'll know that if the DHCP failed, if you're paying attention during the boot in, you'll see that it fails. But if not, it'll have here in the gateway is it'll have 192.168.100.1. See, we have the 1.1, so that's mine. And I've actually given this system an IP address before, and it was that IP address right there, which is probably why the DHCP server is working. The DHCP process worked this time around, but it is what it is. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to go ahead and if you do see that, is you'll have to get it you'll have to get it updated to the correct stuff, and typically in most, just regular, Soho, which is, small office, home office or whatever, is the gateway address is typically going to be just 192.168.1.1. The DNS server will typically be the same one. And then the IP address will get, you'll just have to know which ones are open. So if you need to get this information or are not sure what it is, then go into your router console, which is usually just, 192.168.1.1 in your browser. We're not going to get into that in this video, but I did want to kind of give you some troubleshooting just to kind of let you know, how to deal with that if it does come up. So just be on the lookout for that. And again, we're going to change this to .local just because we don't care about that. Like, it's not really gonna, unless you have a host name for it, which is totally fine as well. All right, cool. And then here you go. And what we're going to do here is it's just going to confirm all this, and then it's going to automatically reboot after you can choose to do that. I'm going to go ahead and let it do that. Why is that thing not coming? There it is. All right, there we go. And we're going to go ahead and let it do its thing. It will take some time, depending on the hardware that you're installing it on. The time will vary. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just pause the video here. And then once it's done, I will come back and we'll go ahead and just kind of finish up everything. All right. So, all right. Well, it did go ahead and reboot, but it took us right back into this. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go ahead and force shut this down, because we don't need that anymore. Let's take this out. Take out that USB drive, because you will need to, because it will, or else it will continue to just do that, or change the boot order manually. But we're not going to get into that. I'm doing the easy method. Now we're going to let it boot into Proxmox. It's usually a pretty quick boot. We don't need to do that. I don't know why it's doing that. There we go. GNU Linux. Let's let it do its thing. It's booting now. That stuff you just saw on those screens, that's more related to my system. Yours probably won't do that. There we go. All right. So what's going to be most important is this right here. Is this IP address. So go ahead. What I'm going to go ahead and do is now I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my browser, so that we can go ahead and input that and access the console. So keep in mind, remember that password that you put in during the install. So let's go ahead and I got to manually type it in because I can't copy it directly from these. I don't have it set up that way. So we're going to do HTTPS, and we're going to do : / and then we're going to do 192.168.1.7, and we're going to do : 8006. 8006 is going to be the port that you can access it on. So if you ever forget if you ever, if you ever need to know that, it's 8006. So, and then you have two options. You can either put it in as HTTP or HTTPS. If you do it as HTTP, stuff will not be encrypted. So just keep that in mind. And you're going to get a warning when you do this. Let me just turn off the external computer. There we go. So you can see that I input that there. There we go. So let's go ahead and hit enter. And you're going to get a warning. It'll look different depending on the browser you're using. I'm using Firefox, so we don't want to go back. We're going to come down here, and we're going to go ahead and accept risk and continue, and voila. And the username, the default username is going to be root. Oops, going to hit tab. There we go. And you're getting this no valid subscription, which will get annoying if you don't get rid of it. But that's not something that we're going to be doing in this particular video. That is something for a future video. I do plan on doing a series on covering, getting everything set up with Proxmox. So that was just the install. This is the first video. This is the first video in that series. I don't know why I just couldn't talk. and all that stuff. So yeah, so this is all ready to go. Yeah, and yep, like so we can see here, we're gonna start getting into more covering some of the stuff. I don't know if I'm gonna keep going in there and like just breaking down every little thing about Proxmox. I haven't decided. Right now, I plan on this is so far what I've got ready is a 3-part series, which includes this, and then next time we're gonna go ahead and actually get stuff set up a little bit more, because there are a few little things that we want to do, like such as getting rid of that subscription, pop up that comes up. So yeah, but yeah, it's pretty easy to get this all installed. I wanted to show you everything from the beginning all the way through the end, just because I know that can be really, really helpful. Yeah, so make sure to check out the video, the other videos once they come out. Make sure you subscribe for that. Check out the Linux virtualization. The Linux virtualization playlist. I'm going to go ahead and put that up on the screen. Remember, mistakes make you better, so keep on making them. Thank you so much for watching my video, and have the greatest of days.